Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello, everyone. Moving ahead with the concept and with the chapter of environment and society, we do talk about now what actually is the environment. What is the meaning of the term environment? Now, environment in very general terms means surroundings. We do understand that, and by environment, when we are talking about our surroundings. Now, in case of human beings, environment includes all the non-living things, all the living things like plants, animals, and even other human beings. So, whatever you have in your surrounding, whatever is present in your surrounding, whatever is a part of your surrounding is all that is included in your form or in your understanding of environment. However, it is possible to distinguish between the physical environment, the biological environment, and the social environment. Physical environment generally being the materialistic things that you have around you. The biological environment, all the biotic components other than your living creatures that are around you. Social environment, your fellow human beings, and the social norms and terms that are there involving the social environment. However, in a discussion of the relationship between environment and society, the social environment is excluded. When we're talking about environment and society, we generally exclude the concept, we exclude the term, we exclude the understanding of the social environment, and we only focus on the physical and the biological environment. Talking about what in one definition would summarize an environment, it refers to the geographic understanding or the geographic surrounding of man, which includes physical things like water, land, and air, and also plants and animals. So, like I said, here the biological environment, and with all of this, it is the physical environment. So, when you take into consideration a man's surrounding in terms of the physical and the biological environment, which they have explained it in terms like physical things like land, water, air, and the biological environment in terms of plants and animals. That is what is explaining the environmental setup here. Now, talking about or rather distinguishing between the natural environment and the man-made environment. Again, it is very easy for you to understand because this is something that we have been talking about from since our early education days, and very clear is it from the names that what is the natural environment, what is the man-made environment. So the natural environment is something that we receive from nature and includes the physical and the biological environment. So, all of these things that we have received from nature, all of these things that we have been blessed by our nature, that is known as the natural environment. Man-made environment is a result of the modifications made by the man to the natural environment. So, what all modifications that we have made in the natural environment, what have been made by the man, is known as the man-made environment. So at present, the environment is a combination of natural components and man-made components of the environment. We do have natural and man-made components, and it is how our society is developed on. Now, a general definition of environment that we have talked about before also is, it means the surrounding of man, which consists of geographical environment, that is land, water, air, temperature, and so on, and all plants and animals, that is all flora and fauna. So again, the biological aspect in terms of flora and fauna, and the physical aspect in terms of all the geographic and environment understanding that is there. So an environment is the surrounding of the man, which all consists of the geographic environment as well as the environment around you is in relation to the plants, animals, flora, fauna. That is all your biological part. Talking about, very interestingly, the relationship between the environment and the society. Now, what exactly is the relationship between environment and society? Now, every society has their environment. So, how are these things related? What is the role of having an environment and a society, and how should they be, or what all should their aspects be is, or what are actually their aspects, is what we are going to talk about. Now, like I said, every society has its own environment. The nature of the society depends on the environment. Therefore, there is a very close relationship between the society and the environment. The kind of relation of the society that you have, the kind of understanding of the kind of relation between the society and the environment that you have, the kind of understanding that is there between the society and the environment is majorly dependent or is interrelated. So the society depends on what kind of an environment do you have around you, and also in a lot of ways the environment around the society depends on what the people of the society are talking about or thinking about. So let's talk about the two aspects which are there in the societal, in this relationship between the environment and the society. These are two major aspects, which is the adaptation and the exploitation. We have used both of these terms while we were talking about social ecology as well. Now we will understand in a better way how do this become two very major aspects while we are talking about the relationships between the environment and the society. Now, when you talk about the man and his environment, the man and his environment must adapt itself to some of the elements of the environment. The kind of temperature you are being in, the kind of rainfall that you are expecting, the kind of humidity that you have, the kind of sunlight exposure that you have, or the kind of flora and fauna that you have, the availability of the natural resources that are there. All of these things are the things that the person has to imbibe in, the person has to adapt to, the human being has to adapt to, because man cannot change these elements. We cannot change the I am not talking about again the air conditions that you have in your air in your rooms. I'm talking about the general environment, the general surrounding in there. You cannot change some of the elements of the environment. You cannot change the temperature. You cannot change the amount of sunlight that you're receiving that when you are outside. You cannot change the amount of rainfall that you're receiving. So or rather you cannot change you cannot majorly change the mountains being there, the earthquakes when it's happening. All of these things are things to be adapted. All the geographical elements, very important. For example, the geographic elements like climate, mountains, and earthquakes are beyond the control of the man and has to adapt themselves. When you see people who are staying in the plains, or you see people who are staying on the mountains, you see that they have different habits, they have different lifestyles, they have different ways of looking at things. Now, how does that happen? How is it there? Because they adapt to the things around them, they adapt to the environment, the geographical elements, the geographical conditions, and that is how they tune in themselves. So that is what a very major aspect of environment is, that you as a man have to adapt to the major aspects of it. However, on the other hand, man and his society exploit other resources or other elements of society as well. We do take examples of mineral resources, plants, and animals that can be exploited by the society. So, you do see a role of man's exploitation when you do face challenges with mineral resources, when you do see animals being exploited, or you do see plants being exploited. However, here also technology plays a very important role. So technology is the means by which both adaptation and exploitation of the environment takes place. When I talked about air conditions in your rooms, and that is how you are able to beat that environment or the climate outside, it is by the usage of technology. That is how you have got the technological developments, and those have given rise to the different types of societies with different types of relationships with the environment. You do not face a lot of challenges while it is raining outside, because it is the technology because of which we have created our houses, and it is a technology because of which we have created those ceilings which are actually saving us from that rainfall. Or it is the car system, like the transportation that we have made in such a way that is saving us from the rain around outside. So, technology plays a very, very major role in adaptation and also in exploitation. When you talk about mineral resources, when you talk about exploitation to animals and plants, it is a very major role of technology. You've developed that technology to extract the minerals outside from the earth's surface, and that is how you are doing it to that an extent that it has become, or it has turned into, the process of exploitation. You do have the resources, you do have the technology of cutting down the cutting down the trees and making that land which was there, that soil which was there to grow the plants, converting it to the concrete areas and developing your building structures on it. That is how you are exploiting the system with the help of technology. And that is where the technological development or the technology plays a very important role in both the exploitation and the adaptation of the environment that takes place in the society. Moving ahead is the types of societies in relation to the environment. Now, what are the types of societies which are there in relation to the environment? What are the characteristics of those? Let us see. Hunting and gathering societies. I'm sure you would be able to understand immediately what do you mean by hunting and gathering societies. It is the people who have the intimate knowledge about the environment. They know where animals are found and which animals can be hunted for food. So you have that first hand experience with the biological aspect in terms of flora and fauna. You do have that first hand experience when you talk about which all animals should be hunted for eating, or which all animals can be dangerous, and moreover, where will all these animals be found. They know about what types of fruits and tubers can be collected for food. You have that knowledge, you have that intimate knowledge about things wherein you can perform certain actions with the help of your knowledge. You know about the plants with medicinal values. You do understand the availability of the plants, or availability of the medicinal properties in the plants, and that is because you are able to relate to the environment at a first hand level. The technology for hunting includes the hunting skills and simple weapons, like we have talked about in our when we talk about our early, ancient history. When we talk about the hunting and gathering ages, we talk about when they have created the stones, sharpened the edges of the stones, and made it that sharp that it can kill the animal. So all of those were simple weapons. The division of labor is mainly between male and female, where males specialize in hunting and fighting with enemies, and females do the domestic work like looking after the children and cooking. Very simple way of understanding, very simple way of having the division of labor. You have males, you have females, you have people who you have that. A female community who's responsible for certain things, taking care of the children, the household work, the cooking work, all of that aspect, and you have the male community who specialized in hunting and fighting with enemies as well. Now, many tribal societies are there in India, and are hunters and gatherers in many tribal societies are the hunters and gatherers in India. Some of them they have talked about the Chinkus of the Andhra Pradesh, Kadars of Kerala, Kodkas of Chhattisgarh, Birhors of Jharkhand, and that is what is described, and that is what is how talking about the hunting and the gathering community, or the hunting and the gathering society. Moving ahead, we talk about the pastoral society. We do know when you talk about the pastoral society, it is to do with the economy of the pastoral societies that is based upon the domestication of the animals. They need vast grasslands for grazing their animals, and their habitation because of that is majorly in the grasslands. They also are usually nomadic in nature. The Bhutias of Sikkim are an example. These pastoral societies have the major task of domestication of animals. Obviously, for the grazing of their animals, they do need the grasslands, and because of this, they do have their habitations in the grasslands. They are usually nomadic in nature. Why? Because the grasslands also have the age, or they also have the season for their, for them being green or for them being dry. So now when this grasslands in one particular area becomes dry, these people have to move to the other area, grassland, which is greener and can provide fodder for their animals. So that is what makes them nomadic in nature. I hope you understand the term nomadic. Is when people in groups move from one place to another in search of, they have this movement, they have this nomadic life which is related to the movement, the pattern or a patterned movement rather, wherein they go from one place to another in search of, let's say, food, clothing, and their livelihood is sustained. Moving ahead is the agricultural societies. Now, when you talk about the agricultural societies, while hunting and pastoral societies adapt themselves to the environment, the agricultural societies begin the control and exploitation of this environment, settling down in the valleys and fertile areas and begin to build villages is what happens in the agricultural societies, wherein technology plays or begins to develop from agricultural implements to other items through cottage industries. Arts and craft are developed out there, thus elaborate division of labor and social stratification emerges. Now, when you talk about the agricultural societies, it is not just a thing, or it is not just people who have this agricultural aspect to it, or are all involved in agriculture. Obviously, when you have a person, or when you have a community who are agriculturalists staying out here, you would definitely want transporters. You would definitely even want people who can give them fertilizers, who can give them seeds, who can be another thing, another community who are taking care of the sales. So all of this is big, or they want their, for their survival they would need some or the other kind of clothes. So weavers community, for some utensils, so the pottery community, all of these things, all of these communities, how they're interrelated, expands or elaborates the division of labor. You do have people in varied spheres of occupation but related. And that is where how the art and the craft develops, and technology brings to develop one the technology brings to develop from agricultural implements to other items through cottage industries. So you grow a fiber, you grow that part of the cloth that is further on processed in becoming threads, and further on processed in becoming the shirt pieces, and that is how it is linked. The family is the most important social unit and the main agency of socialization. With surplus production in agriculture, the stage is set for further developments in urban centers or towns or cities. Now, when you have a lot of development, when you have a lot of production in agriculture, that is when you talk about the urban and the industrial societies. Now, urban and the industrial societies emerged a long time ago as the centers of administration, trade, commerce, religion, and education. I am sure you must have heard about towns and temple towns and how all of these, like here in, how these developments take place. For example, there was one temple being there, how because of that temple, people started coming to that place, because of people, there were shops being opened, because of the shops people had to survive, people had to stay in there, so the buildings started coming up. When people were staying in there, they had different needs, and hence people of other communities started to come in, and that is how it actually got into an urban industrialized setup. Especially after the Industrial Revolution, urban industrial societies came into existence. Now, these differ from the type of societies with regard to population, environment, and technology because they have one large population, and there is a great amount of control over the environment and modifications of the environment, because you have created a man made environment which is different from the natural environment. You have all of those technological modifications and developments, because of which we have been able to have an environment which is a little more as per ourselves, rather than the environment which is naturally present there. And because of the same, it has been possible only due to the technological advancements. Air conditions that you have, the transportation that you have, the clothing that you wear, the kind of the buildings, the kind of buildings that you have, all of these are the technological advancements. The deliveries that you get, the groceries, the kind of food material, the kind of education, for that example, the kind of health facility, all of these that we get come under the technological advancement, and hence comes under the urban economy, which depends on the trade, commerce, and industry and other services. Now, social organization in urban cities significantly differs from that of villages because of the predominance of secondary groups and impersonal social interaction. Wherein when you talked about the unit, or rather when you talked about the agricultural societies, we did say that family is the most important agency of socialization. But herein, when you have large population, you have so many people from varied backgrounds, the predominance area of interaction or social life is the secondary groups, because of the impersonal social interaction that takes place. Moving, I hope this is clear to you. This is something that is very important for us to understand with regards to the environment and the society. And this is something that has to be understood for the very clear vision of the man made and the natural environment as well.